Hello, everyone. Welcome to our presentation today. Just to introduce myself, my name is Jonathan Brandeo, and I am the Director of Client Support here at EPM. And today we are excited to present to you a little bit of the highlights of the Jumbo Express program. Now, today we're going to go over these items fairly quickly as they're just a few items we need to discuss. If you do have any additional questions once our presentation has concluded today, feel free to reach out to your account executives directly for more information. So we'll jump into our presentation, go through some basic details, some highlights on the Jumbo Express program, and talk about those a little more in detail. Thank you so much again for joining us, and we'll jump right into things. So first off, we're going to start off, once again, the name of the program is the Jumbo Express. And this program, we'll talk about first off an overview of the different options that are currently available. So first off, you have your fully amortizing fixed rate 15 and 30-year terms. You also have your 5-year, 6-month ARMs, 7-year, 6 months, 10 years, 6 month, and so forth. From there, you have your different options, and there are no mortgage insurance allowed on this particular program. Here we can pull up the actual matrices of the different options that are available for Jumbo Express. You can see based on here, especially under purchase and rate and term, your lowest FICO score is going to be 660, and then it's going to go up from there depending on your particular transaction. You can see broken down based on your primary occupancy, second home, non-owner occupied, and how many units are part of that particular transaction. You have that for purchase, rate, and term. And then on the right side, you have that for your cash out refinances. Your maximum loan amount, the highest that you're going to be able to go to is 3 million. So that's going to be your max. And then your LTVs are all going to be based on how many units you're using, where your loan amount is at, and what the minimum credit score is for your borrower. So for example, we'll start at 2 million. So max LTV is going to be 89.99. So 680 minimum credit score. You can also, if you're down to a 660 score, then your max LTV is going to be 80 on a 660 FICO score with a $2 million loan amount. To go all the way up to 740 FICO score, we can go up to 3 million with an 80 LTV. So we can break this down, go through all these. This information is also going to be available in our TPO portal along with this presentation for you to always use this as a reference tool to go back to double check and make sure you're structuring these transactions correctly. Now, moving into the kind of bits and pieces of the program itself. So first off, we talked about your maximum loan amount, but your minimum loan amount on these programs, on all the options that are available for Jumbo Express, is going to be 400,000. So 400,000 will be your minimum loan amount, and then you can go up to 3 million based on what your borrower's FICO score is and where you're at, where your LTV. Your max DTI that's allowed on all the options is 45%. Multiple finance properties is allowed. And what we're going to do is we're just going to follow your AUS findings. So once you run your AUS findings and you see what that comes back as, we're then going to be able to look at that from our side on our operations team to make a determination on how we're proceeding moving forward with that. AUS findings that are required are your approve or accept eligible or approve, accept ineligible, are due only to loan amounts or maximum LTV on cash out refinances. No high price covered loans allowed. All the loans must be under QM safe harbor. So these are not non-QM programs, these are QM programs. So we do need to make sure that it fits within that safe harbor requirements. For any income and employment documentation requirements, we're going to follow just Fannie and Freddie's normal seller guide. So you would just look in their normal guidelines there, and we're going to follow that when we go to underwrite these files. Now, when it comes to reserves, reserves may be required depending once again how your particular transaction is put together. So in these particular cases, you'll see here. So first off, the first way that we will require that is if the LTV is 80% or less. So you'll be able to see there. So let's say, for example, your LTV is 70. So we're going to need reserves in that case. The other way we're going to do that is based on your loan amount. So if you're at 1 million or less than 1 million, we're just going to go ahead and follow whatever the AUS requirement is for those reserves. So if AUS says we need 2 months of reserves, then we'll follow that, whichever, or it says we might not need it, then we might not need it in that case. So we're going to follow the AUS requirement for 1 million and less loan amount. Now, when we start going above the $1 million, if we're going from 1 million up to the maximum loan amount of 3 million, then it's going to start increasing how much reserves will be required from that borrower. So first off, between 1 million and 2 million, we're going to need 3 months of reserves. 2 million to 2.5, 12 months reserves. And then you go from 2.5 to 3 million, then we're going to go up to 18 months worth of reserves that will be required. So keep that in mind when you're working with your borrower and putting together this, what your reserve requirement is going to be based on what your loan amount is and your LTV. Now, as we're making our way to your different property types that can be used for Jumbo Express. So eligible property types include your traditional single family home, your 2 to 4 unit property, a PUD, condos. Now, the big thing about condos is they do need to be agency warrantable, meaning that they need to be either HUD approved, VA approved, Fannie Mae approved in those cases. So you want to make sure that that community is approved prior to your submission to EPM, because EPM does not offer condo spot approvals, and we do not have the ability to go ahead and approve a full condo community. That would have to be something that's done prior to that loan being registered with EPM. So you want to make sure and double check that. And each of those individual agencies, HUD, Fannie Mae, do have sections of their websites where you can look up and search if that condo community is currently approved, or maybe they're up for a renewal, or maybe that condo approval has fully expired and they have to go through the process of getting approved again, which can take many, many months to do. So always check that up in the beginning, especially if you're working with a condo community. And then we also do allow for co-ops as well under this program. If you are located in New York State, there may be some additional requirements needed. If you are looking at that in New York State, you can reach out to your account executive to receive some more information on how you need to structure that. Now, some ineligible property types. For Jumbo Express, it's not allowed to be used with manufactured homes, and it cannot be used with any unique type of properties or working farms. So log homes, condotels, a home that's built in kind of the side of a mountain. There's all these other types of homes that are tiny homes, all these weird type of homes that are being built across the country. Those are not allowed for this program. It has to be your traditional, straightforward, single family home, 2 to 4 unit property, condos that are agency approved, or a co-op. It can't be manufactured, and it can't be any of those unique, very different types of properties. For example as well for that is you're not allowed to use any mixed use or leasehold properties as well. So those would not be allowed for the Jumbo Express. The program is not available in Puerto Rico, but it is available in the rest of the United States throughout the whole country. Now, for your appraisal, you would need a traditional appraisal to be done for this program. The Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac 2075 or 2070 are not allowed in lieu of the appraisal, and we do not allow for property inspection waivers on this particular program. So even if you get that PIW on your AUS, it is not allowed to be used for this program. We do require an appraisal to be provided for the Jumbo Express program. Now, if the collateral underwriting score is greater than 2.5, there will be additional requirements needed that our team will provide you with those additional requirements once that information has been provided to them for them to review and see exactly what we need to keep things moving along from there. Now, we would need 2 appraisals if the loan amount is over 1.5 million. So under 1.5 million, we can just take 1 appraisal. But if you are going over the 1.5 million, then we would need 2 complete full appraisals in order to proceed moving forward. Now, if the property is located in a declining market, and that declining market is going to be determined based on the appraiser's determination. So they're going to go and they're going to complete their report and look over the facts of the area of that subject property and see if it is something that is in a declining market. And if so, what will need to happen is that the maximum LTV would be reduced by 10% based on that appraiser stating that that home is in a declining market. So another thing to keep in mind when you're doing that research with your borrower, with your realtors, with any other partners that you're working with, is checking and seeing that area where that property is located in currently. Now, for all the borrowers, so if there is more than 1 borrower on that transaction, every borrower must have a minimum of 2 credit scores. So we would need that, no exceptions to that. And along with requiring 2 credit scores that fit and of course are qualifying based on the matrix we talked about earlier, they must have a mortgage or rental history of 0-30 for the last 24 months. So they can't have any mortgage lates on their history for the last 24 months. So another thing to keep in mind when you're checking out that information, and of course, when you're pulling the credit report in AUS in the beginning stages of putting this loan together. Now, if the borrower does have frozen credit, we do not allow for frozen credit on this program. So as it even says right here, no borrower in the transaction may have frozen credit. If a borrower has frozen credit and unfreezes their credit after the original credit report was ordered, a brand new credit report would need to be ordered. So if it was frozen, you pulled the credit report, you send that to EPM, and then we find out that the credit was frozen, but then it was unfrozen after the last time you pulled credit, we would ask for a completely brand new credit report to be rerun, whether that's being run on your end or that's something that you're requesting us to run that credit report for you. Now, that report must be obtained to reflect any current updated information for full evaluation. We want to make sure that the most up-to-date information is always provided on those credit reports that we have. So that way our operations team, our underwriting team especially, has the ability to make a full determination and make sure we have all the items and information we need to keep things moving along smoothly and make sure this borrower fully qualifies for the program. Assigned 4506C is required from all borrowers. Tax transcripts are required to be obtained from the IRS only for income for years being used for qualification. So whatever years you're using for that income qualification would be what we would require the borrower to obtain directly from the IRS. Wage transcripts are acceptable for W-2 borrowers. Borrower pulled transcripts are not acceptable. We would need things directly from the IRS to be provided in order for that to be acceptable to keep things moving forward. IRS transcripts and the supporting income documentation provided by the lender must be consistent. So being provided from your end and from the borrower's end, all those information must be consistent. So the numbers that are on each of those documents must match. All the names and information must match across the board because we want to make sure that we don't have to keep adding additional conditions or finding additional documentation to make sure that we can back up and confirm the information that's on those documents. You want to make sure it's consistent across the board so we don't have any additional conditions or any holdups when we keep things moving along. Now, if there is a seller contribution, so you'll have a maximum seller contribution. So if the LTV is between 75.1 and 89.99, the max contribution is 6%. Now, if the LTV is less than or equal to 75%, then the max contribution is going to be 9%. Now, if it's a non-owner occupied home, then 2% is the max contribution across the board, no matter what the LTV may be. Non-owner occupied, it's always going to be a 2% seller concession max for that. So take a look at your LTVs and see where your max contributions could be if you do have a seller that is interested in providing those contributions. And no prepayment penalties are allowed on the Jumbo Express program. Now, we do allow visas for non-permanent residents. So you want to make sure you review this list. And once again, all this documentation that I'm going through, all of these slides are available in our TPO portal. So you can always use that as a reference tool to go back to and make sure that you're following those steps and the different requirements. But you can see here, we break it down, each of the different acceptable visas, United States visas that we do allow and I'll accept in order to keep things moving along with that borrower. So you can see your E series, the G series, the H, the L, NATO series, the O series, and then your TN1s and TN2. So those are the ones that can be used. Now, with that, if we do have a borrower that has an acceptable visa as a non-permanent resident, there would be additional requirements. So you can see there below. They must have a history of visa renewals. So we can see that that's going to continuously renew. They have to have a minimum of 2-year employment history within the United States and have qualifying income from those 2 years within the United States. They must be able to verify that the current employment has a probability of at least 3 years to continue. So we need to see that they're going to be at minimum with that same employer for 3 more years after this loan has closed. So we're going to check that, and a verification of employment document can be used to document that. And any funds to close must be deposited in a United States financial institution. We do not allow for funds to come from anywhere outside of the United States. It must come from a bank, a financial institution within the United States in order for those funds to be used towards the borrower's transaction. There are some borrowers that would be completely ineligible to be able to use this program. We do not allow for borrowers that have only an ITIN, so individual taxpayer identification number. Any irrevocable trusts are not allowed for this program. And any borrower that is currently in a lawsuit would not be allowed to use the Jumbo Express program. Non-occupant co-borrower. So I mentioned earlier that you can have more than one borrower on this particular program. We would follow your AUS findings on making sure that the borrower still qualifies with a non-occupant co-borrower being part of that transaction. So it is allowed, and we would just follow your AUS findings to determine on if we need anything additional to keep things moving along with that co-borrower. So let's talk about a little bit your non-arm's length transactions. So all the parties to the transaction should be independent of one another, except as indicated below, if a direct relationship exists between or among the parties of a transaction is non-arm's length and related loan is not eligible for purchase. So the following transactions are eligible provided that such transactions and the related circumstances are properly documented. So there can be cases where it's not an arm's length transaction per se, but as long as we document that throughout the process from beginning to end, there can be times where this can work for that, but it has to fit within these bullet points that are located here on this slide. There are no exceptions to go outside of that. So keep that in mind, is that it's going to be just these items that we're going to go over here on this slide. So sales or transfers between members of the same family. The transaction may not be due to any adverse circumstances. Property seller acting as his or her own real estate agent. That's okay. Borrower acting as their own real estate agent. That's okay. The borrower is the employee of the originating lender. That's all right. So if you have an employee of your company that you're offering this program to, that's okay. You can offer it to somebody who is an employee of your company. Borrower purchasing from his or her current landlord. So if they are purchasing from a landlord, which means that they were renting that property, we would need canceled checks or bank statements requiring to verify that there is a satisfactory pay history between that borrower and landlord. So we need to see those canceled checks or bank statements to show a history of that borrower paying their rent on time to the landlord that they're purchasing that home from. And investment property transactions must always be an arm's length transaction. There can't be any direct relation between the buyer and seller when it comes to investment properties. So from there, like I said, very quick, just some simple guidelines, some simple things to keep in mind when it comes to the Jumbo Express program. As I mentioned earlier and a few times before, is that we do have the information available all the time within our TPO portal. So feel free to jump in there. You can see here in this screenshot, you can go to our guidelines section and pull up the specific guidelines for the Jumbo Express program. The TPO portal is also where you're going to find the presentation that we just went through, and today's recording will be there as well. So you can always use that as a reference tool to go back to if you have any additional questions on how to put things on a basic level together for the Jumbo Express program. Our team is always here to assist you with any questions that you may have. We have our wholesale leadership here, both Frank Neese and Keith Russell, who work across the country with our fellow account executives to assist you further with any questions that you may have after today's presentation, anytime in the future, whether you just have some general questions or you're working on something specific that you're ready to move forward with. Always feel free to reach out to your account executive that's assigned to you if you do have any additional questions. Now, if you are not signed up with EPM yet, you can also reach out directly to our account executive team, and one of our team members will be more than happy to provide you with further information on becoming a partner with EPM. As I mentioned, if you do have any additional questions, we do have a general phone number and general email for our account executive team that's available right here on this page. And of course, if you are already a partner with EPM, feel free to reach out to our account executives for additional assistance. Thank you so much for taking a little bit of time out of your day today to spend it with us and go over quickly the bits and pieces and the steps of the Jumbo Express program. Thank you so much for your partnership. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we hope to see you all soon.